Thank you so much. I'm Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm so humbled and honored to be at the WeWork Innovation Summit. Feels so fun to give a talk in front of real life people, even though there's only 7 actual humans here. I know there's many more behind the camera, and it's a subject matter and a timing that I feel very excited about. So thank you for that, and thank you once again to WeWork for the opportunity. So I think the thing that I'm most thinking about right now is how rapid the changes around us and how many of those things are happening at the same time. Obviously, given the circumstances of this not being in real life, I don't have to explain to anybody what's happened over the last year plus around the coronavirus and how that's changed behavior. You know, I basically have made my entire career on intuitive understanding of what people are about to do, whether that was join the internet and buy wine on it, whether that was to start using social media as a way to communicate at a scale that we've never seen before. A current obsession of mine around NFTs and what social tokenization means, actually turning social currency into a monetizable environment. That is going to be wild, wild stuff. And so this is all I do. This is all I do. And obviously as a human, I do that. As a person that has a personal brand and some awareness out there, I navigate strategically through that. And then as a CEO of a 1,500 plus person global enterprise, I think about that a lot. And so for me, when I was thinking about this talk, what I keep going back to is a lot of words. And, both, fast, if you fuck up, who cares? As long as you're not out of business. These kind of themes that keep going to my head, which is everybody who's watching this right now, whether you're an individual entrepreneur or you're the CEO and she's running a 50,000 person organization, every one of you on the other side is sitting right now thinking, strategizing, trying to understand. Obviously in the context of WeWork, it's kind of interesting for me because I've probably spent more time on innovation around what I'm going to do with my employees in the last 6 months more than I have in 15 years. I grew up an old school guy, even though I've been an innovative guy because of my immigrant roots and because of the way my dad trained me and because of my natural deep love for people. You can't imagine how these 7 or 8 humans right here right now are making this speech better because I just need that kind of social bounce back. I've always been everybody in the office, no work from home, everybody sit around me. There's videos on the internet 4 or 5 years ago, and I had great friends like Jason Fried and the people at 37 Signals who were very pro work from home. And I was always like, no, not for me. I get it. It's more efficient, this and that, but I do best when I can have osmosis. You know, to me, I think that intuition, osmosis, emotional intelligence is one of the great misunderstood things of our society. And I think what you're seeing with the push on college and cryptocurrency, political unrest and everything is us getting into a more gray conversation than the last century of black and white where it was like college, work, you know, these very scripted math where the right thing to do, the practicality, the way it was, the establishment was the way to live. And I think you're seeing the early stages. And I think for all of us that are watching this, in the next 30, 40, 70 plus years of our lives, we will see the rise of the gray. I think we're going to start really understanding intuition, really understanding empathy and kindness as business attributes, as hard skills, not something that's a weakness. And one of the things I think about a ton is what was my obsession with not wanting people to work from home? And the obsession was that I think the thing that I value more than most people that I know is osmosis. I like the subtle little thing. She overheard this. I saw them talk. That's who I am. Social cues. The greatest thing that happened to me with coronavirus is that I will never be on a phone conference call again. I hated them because I couldn't get a social cue. There was 22 people on it. I had no context. And I just didn't know and I'm somebody who's pushing envelopes. So when you're pushing an envelope, you got to see how people react to it. Because if you went too far, you have to bring it back. And I can only do that in human form. Video conferencing has brought 95% of that to me. And that's remarkable and amazing. What I'm never going to go away from is that extra 5% that is the magic for me. So I think a lot about what I want to do going forward. and how I want to innovate, both in communication style. One thing for all the leaders here I'm just going to kind of ramble and give a lot of data points. I think one thing that we've done recently at our company that I highly recommend is finding virtual and digital escapism, because people are struggling to manage their own time. This whole fear that business people had, owners, CEOs, that people were not going to work, kind of almost went reverse. I think people don't know how to manage their time and are working almost too much, and actually need the break to go to the bar or go grab lunch with people. And so I was like, part of me, if I'm being transparent, was like, yes, at least we're being effective and productive. After I got over that hump, I was like, wait a minute, I think people are struggling a little bit here. And so now we've created I own a publishing company called 1:37 p.m. in the men's lifestyle arena. And so now at 1:37 p.m. Eastern every day for 15 minutes, we do a company VaynerX, not just VaynerMedia, but Gallery Media Group, VaynerCommerce, all the companies, Vayner Speakers. We do a break where I or somebody in the company interviews somebody interesting just for 15 minutes, just so they can break, and it's a weird time, so they get a half an hour. How are you going to use this new world? Because let there be no confusion. I love when there's this enormous pushback to the term the new normal. I used it the other day and I couldn't believe the comments of how mad. I didn't have time to look at why we're so mad at this word. Whether you call it the new normal or you call it something else, I hope there is no naivete in this room or the many that are watching at home that when we come back, let's just all for the purposes of this talk, call it January 1st of 2022, it will be very different. And I think there will be winners and losers, both in life and in business, in the strategies that people come up with during this time for that moment. It just will be different. And so for me, whether it's things like forced entertainment to break up the day for people that are virtual, whether it is in the very hardcore context of this conference, at least on the overlay of the company, what your real estate strategy is with hubs and co-working and home and office, or whether it's what you're going to do for M&A or how you're going to communicate your company. To me, my whole career's success of framework has been around both. And let me explain. When I was awesome at email marketing and Google AdWords, when social media came along, I didn't do what most people that were winning on email and Google AdWords were doing. I know those companies. I know those entrepreneurs. They were winning with email and AdWords, so they decided that they were going to shit on social media because they didn't want for a new thing to happen on the consumer level that they had to figure out and compete with because they had won the prior thing. The number one way to lose today and tomorrow is to overvalue how you won yesterday. I'm going to say it nice and slow for the kids in the back. The number one way to lose today and tomorrow is to overvalue how you won yesterday. And I believe if we're talking about innovation and we're talking about this moment, I believe that there is an enormous amount of conversation for people to get dramatically thoughtful in these next 60, 90, 120 days to what they're doing with their employees, with their marketing strategy, with their operations strategy, because this will be absolutely, hands down, the most disruptive next couple years that we've seen because of something called options. Let there be no confusion. I sit every day and say to myself, oh my God, here comes NFTs. Just like I saw with influencers in 2008, which is why I wrote a book called Crush It, which started this whole Gary Vee thing for me. I said, this Web 2.0, this WordPress, this Shopify, this Amazon service, normal people are going to be able to, instead of working at a company and get paid $130,000, start a company around homemade honey or sneakers or anything and make $150,000 a year or $90,000, be happier and do that instead of working somewhere. Cool. That has happened to some degree. I think all of us can agree. We focus too much on Charlie D'Amelio and Logan Paul as influencers who make tens of millions. But I'm going to assume, and definitely behind the camera, we also know a lot of people who just make $4,000 on AdSense on YouTube or $40,000, and it's better for their life. It changed their life. We've been very affected by influencer marketing, whether you don't like it because of what it does. And I understand all the downfalls of it, the keeping up with the Joneses, everyone's FOMO. That's not social media's fault. That's not influencers' fault. That's parenting and DNA and environment of insecurity and self-esteem issues that we need to address in the macro conversation and the modern parenting framework, not should your kid be on TikTok or not. That's just the reality of how life works. That's about to happen in NFT land. Right this second, somebody's watching this right now, and currently they're a construction worker, a teacher, a CEO, and what they're going to be in 36 months is an artist. The framework of this and the ability to monetize is such little friction that there's going to be enormous change. This is another monstrous option for humans to not go and work at companies, but to do what they needed to do. There was people that were dancers, models, comedians who didn't have to go and work in companies who've won influencer marketing. There are now going to be enormous amounts of people that have artistic talent. And let's not forget, art is in the eye of the beholder. So you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be able to play who are now going to choose that. What does this all mean for the majority of the people that I think are watching this conference? It means that you as an organization need to bring more value to people for them to consider to work for you instead of working for themselves. This is a major issue. Not minor, major. So I think the NFT infrastructure and the blockchain infrastructure is going to create a paradigm shift similar to what the internet did in the late 90s. You compound that with the fact that the internet's already in place, unlike what the world looked like when the internet came along. And now you're creating a game of options that we've never seen before. What does that mean? It means, in my opinion, the strategies of how you're going to bring value to your employees becomes the most remarkable conversation in a long, long time for survival, not just success. What does that mean? Of course, there's the binary, easy conversation of how much you pay people. Cool. That's one combo. As the world gets more connected and has more flexibility of offices and things of that nature, there's also going to be a supply of employees. I think you're going to see companies more than ever play a game where they're employing people in places where the cost of those employees are lower, whether that's within the same country or around the globe. So there's going to be a supply and demand ecosystem. But I think for most of us that are listening here, one of the things that I'm spending all my time on is how do I bring more value to the people that work for me? I think the obvious one, again, given the context of which platform I'm giving this talk on, is I can't imagine anybody not having an and in both macro real estate employee office strategy, which I'm passionate about. I'm sure many of you are. It's probably hence why the majority are watching this to try to get nuggets and insights. But I think it goes well beyond that. For me, I'm going to go to a very interesting place in this talk of what I think is the breakthrough on how you innovate as an individual going forward. It's the concept of scaling unscalable behavior. So the thing that I'm most worried about is I'm going to walk into this buzzsaw of incredible options for people to not work for me and work for themselves, which I love, by the way. As an entrepreneur, I always root for that. But I know most people don't have the stomach for that life anyway. It's too much risk. It's anxiety for many. So cool. There's going to be a big set of available people. But I want to win that game against all the other companies that are watching on the other side. To me, this term of scaling the unscalable goes back to both an and. Let me explain. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at some faces. Every one of them has a different KPI. She may want to work here because it's a salary increase from the prior place. Somebody might want the flexibility of work-life balance or options of where they can live because you've given them that option, or the challenge of the work, or this, or that, or this, or that, and both, and both, and both. I believe the organizations that create a culture, but more importantly, operate so they're not full of shit in delivering against a culture that actually wants to know what every person is actually interested in and have the framework of enough options to feed them, whether that is location-based, financial-based, culture-based, creativity-based, nonprofit-based, whatever it is. The companies that come to the table with the most flexibility and an ability to actually audit people coming in with what they want and like and are interested in, but then more importantly, also be prepared for people to go through their journey. I have a very interesting company. A lot of people start in our company at a very young age. So at first, they're just like, I'm going to be the CEO, or I'm going to start my own company, or I'm going to work my face off because they think I want that. On the record, I'm a fan of work ethic, but not to an unhealthy level. I just need to now make sure I nail that once and for all. And that's amazing. A funny thing happens to those 23-year-olds when they become 29. They're like, I fell in love. I want to have more time with my plus one. And then they become 34 and like, I have a kid. Oh crap, I'm moving to the suburbs. Oh, all of a sudden, I don't want to be the CEO anymore. Now that I'm a big girl and big boy, I don't want that pressure. I want a great job that I'm happy in, and I like that balance. The companies that have the flexibility, the companies that are religious about listening to them along their journey and creating a menu of and boths instead of the focus of the last century where everybody cared about the word or, as if the people at the top were able to make this amazing decision that worked for everybody. School didn't work for everybody. My company, I obsess over this. I know for a fact, as I stand here right now, of the 1,500, there are hundreds of people in my company that the system I have in place isn't working for them. That devastates me, and I try to chip and chip and chip away at it. I believe this great reset that is coming, and it is. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean like all goes this way, all goes that way. It's just going to be different. If you understand how humans work, we get very used to patterns. By show of head nods or hand, like, remember how weird it was at first? And now it's going to feel weird to go back. It's what we do. It's summer vacation. Like the first 3 days of summer vacation, you're like, yes, fuck school, did it. And then like you get used to it and then come back. Like those in and out periods are a challenge. This has been a long time in this game. We've gotten used to some shit. It was weird for me to take a shower to come here today. Like that was weird, you know? And so like for me, what I want to make sure that everybody on the other side recognizes is the moment. That's a good way for me to just wrap this up. Please recognize the moment, leaders and entrepreneurs and executives and anybody who's watching this right now. This is actually a moment. The gray hairs at 45 allow me to know this. I've been very, very, very good at very few things, but a couple I've nailed. And one of them clearly has been understanding where there's a moment around consumer and human behavior. It's a big moment. The ones that deploy empathy, compassion, sympathy, selflessness while worrying about the selfishness of their P&L, because that's real life. You can be noble as shit. If you go out of business, all those people have to find different jobs anyway. So we're running businesses here. But the ones that deploy that in every way, obviously at a WeWork event, I'm assuming a lot of you are thinking from a real estate strategy, and I think you really need to think through it. This is not like we're either going to be at work at home or we're going to be in the office. Anybody who thinks it's going to be that binary is completely colorblind to the situation. But for me, when I give a talk, I'm trying to bring value and I have no context of where you are mentally on the other side. There's a million things to be thinking through right now. And I'm telling you, pin these words on your board. The word and the word both is such a friend during times like this. Because what happens is you start doing many things, you start tasting those things, and you start dropping the things that don't taste as well as the other things, and you're left with a menu and a meal that fits you, your organization, and most of all, the people that work within it. And that is the strategy you need to come in with. So be prepared, because behavior has shifted aggressively during this 12, what will eventually be 18 months. And the way you act to take advantage of land grab, or the not having the right strategy and declining in market share because your competitors did, is going to be real life. It is that moment. Please give a lot of time, as I think we're into the spring and summer where you can think about it, because we're going to have to start implementing definitely by likely early parts by fall, but definitely by winter. And I want you to win. And if you've allocated time for this talk, I want you to win. So thank you for having me.